on the moon continuously. And because it has that iron and is slightly magnetic, you can use magnetic brushes and filters and a number of different ways in which to keep your habitat clean. So I'm not a person that is very worried about the dust. I think, again, there's some engineering challenges that have to be overcome, but I know enough engineers who are excited about overcoming those that I don't think that's a problem.
You write on page 46 of your book that the moon is resource-rich, and there's an International Space Station there and a lunar base that's been envisioned by NASA. But with your proposal, which is like a parallel effort, these travels are going to be landing people precisely at known spots. They're lunar experts. They're shipped to do their work in space. And one of the things you said was that it wouldn't be these generic broad-based trips. They would be very specific. They'd be landing in specific areas where mining is going to be done or settlement's going to happen. Can you speak about that? Because that seemed like there was a possibility of a huge economy of scale with regard to space travel. And I could see it when you wrote it in the book.
Well, if you can meet the cost parameters that I outline in the book, particularly for launch costs from Earth to the moon, and that target is about $3,000 a kilogram payload to the moon, then you have opened up a large number of other opportunities for activities in space as well as on the moon. That $3,000 a kilogram cost target is about 20 times less than what the marginal cost of the Apollo 17 mission was in terms of launch costs. Now, reducing costs by a factor of 20, it may sound like an awful lot, but you've got to remember that from other technologies and what has happened to costs of other technologies, it's not very much. And indeed, since the design of the Saturn V rocket, upon which my estimates were based, is now a 50-year-old design. It's hard to believe, but that rocket was being designed 50 years ago. There is no question in my mind, or in Michael Griffin's mind, the former NASA administration, or anybody else's mind who's thought about it, that those costs can't be reduced by many, many factors. With new materials, new computer manufacturing techniques, just any number of things are going to make those costs go down. If, again, the private sector does it. If the government does it, I can't tell you how the costs are going to go.
They'll probably escalate into the infinite, like they are now.
Now, just as I was writing that book, of course, Mike Griffin and his colleagues at NASA were looking at developing the Ares rocket systems, Ares 1 and Ares 5, and if that effort, or certainly had it proceeded, the investors and the corporation developed for helium-3 access from the moon would have to look at the cost structure for those rocket systems and see how it compared with what they might be able to do with a uprated Saturn V, what I call in the book a Saturn VI. And that is a trade study that I haven't done and would have to be done sometime in the future if new rocket systems became available. My gut tells me that Saturn VI, uprated Saturn V, for the long haul, commercial haul, will turn out to be more cost effective, but I don't know that for sure.
Do you think that we would ever be able to use helium-3 to get to the moon?
Probably not to get to the moon. It's just too short a trip. But fusion rockets, helium-3 is particularly amenable to very efficient fusion rockets. And when you talk about enabling trips to Mars, then it would definitely become a player. If you have developed economical fusion power systems here on Earth, then you will have done essentially all the technology work necessary to build a fusion rocket using helium-3 that could accelerate you to Mars and halfway there, say, just for simplicity, and then decelerate as you get closer, and that could significantly shorten the time required for a trip to Mars, and that's very important. We really need to do that. Using chemical rocket systems, or minimum energy systems, as they're sometimes called, we're looking at generally 8 to 9 month one-way trip to Mars, and you certainly, from a biomedical point of view, would like to shorten that as much as you possibly can.
How amenable has NASA been to your proposal, Return to the Moon, the book and all the detail in it?
Well, privately, I would have to say that NASA engineers and Mike Griffin, when he was administrator, and others were very supportive. Mike Griffin acted as an editor of the book and he of the manuscript, and so yeah, conceptually they don't have any. As far as I know, nobody has any real problem with it. But practically, it is something that the United States government was not in a position to pursue because of its long-term commitment to this other form of fusion power research we talked about, deuterium-tritium, and a very, very strong lobby within the Department of Energy, within the White House Office of Science and Technology, and elsewhere, to stick with that path for both, I think, domestic political reasons as well as for international political reasons. And so NASA was never in a position politically within the Bush administration, or certainly not within this current administration, to become an advocate of a private enterprise effort to harvest helium-3 from the moon. And so I really don't expect until that changes that the United States government will show much interest in this project. Now, other nations, China, Russia, Japan, India now a little bit, have begun to talk a great deal about helium-3, at least publicly. I don't know what they're doing internally to pursue the technology, but nevertheless, press releases have on many occasions mentioned their interest in helium-3 fusion and in going to the moon to get that resource.
Richard Branson with Virgin Galactic obviously is spending a ton of money on making private space travel possible in the next few years. And I'm wondering if he would be a potential player in helium-3 energy, because he has said many times that he is interested in providing new sources of energy, if he would be a right fit for something like this on a private level. It would seem to be.
To talk to Branscombe about that. His interest right now is in a much, much lower level of space travel, namely just providing a suborbital flight to people and getting to the point of where you can commercially undertake an effort the scale that is required for developing helium-3 fusion based on lunar resources. That's a whole...
Right. I get that. It's a whole other gestalt. It's a whole other universe of seriousness. But it would just seem to me his fascination in exploration and discovery and adventure would make him a kind of an interesting...
Well, he's been a hard man to get a hold of. But,
yes. Well, you got to catch him in a balloon or on an island and maybe on a plane, you know?
We have people who have been interested in this, particularly myself, have talked to a lot of potential angel investors as well as venture capitalists. It's well beyond anything a venture capitalist would be interested in, but you learn by talking to people like that. And it really is a kind of an effort that is waiting for one or two or three or some number of what we call angel investors who are not interested in an immediate return on investment, but are interested in pursuing an opportunity that may turn out to be very, very big sometime in the future.
You talk in the book about risk, and you mentioned the several disasters that have happened with NASA and the flights to the moon. You talk about fail to operate, fail to manual, fail to safe. Can you describe to the public what that is? I thought that was an important point about kind of restructuring the way NASA is doing things.
Well,